Hello and welcome to the new Mindscape. In this video, I'm going to talk about the spiritual journey in the monomyth. When you watch Hollywood films, you might have noticed that it seems to be that it's often the same story repeated over and over, only with different appearances, characters, and plot variations. The basic mythological structure remains unchanged. The American scholar of mythology, Joseph Campbell, analyzed thousands of myths from around the world and found a single common structure underlying them. He said that they're all variations on a single basic myth, which he called the monomyth. He wrote a book in 1949 on this subject, which was called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He called the basic mythological story the hero's journey. Now, although it's debatable whether such a common structure exists in all myths, Hollywood directors have used Campbell's book, his notion of the monomyth, as a template to write their scripts. And so that's why it's easy to find the monomyth structure in Hollywood films. So, for example, George Lucas, the producer of the Star Wars series, studied Campbell's theory so closely that he based his entire story on it. He consciously based the Star Wars story on the monomyth. That's why the Star Wars series was so popular, because this story touched something deep in the structure of human mythology. And similarly, the success of films like Avatar and other blockbusters are also built on this mythological structure. Joseph Campbell's analysis of the monomyth was inspired by the work of Arnold Van-Gennep, the anthropologist that I mentioned earlier, who wrote the classic book Rites of Passage in 1903. Van-Gennep focused on certain types of rituals, but Campbell used Van-Gennep's scheme to consider the monomyth itself as sharing the structure of a rite of passage. So basically, a rite of passage has three stages. First is separation, then is transition or liminality, and third is reincorporation. In the first stage, you are pulled out of ordinary life and separated from your conventional social roles and routines. In the second stage of liminality or transition, you undergo tests, tribulations, and extraordinary experiences through connection with magical or spiritual powers. And in the third phase, you return back to normal social life, but as a transformed person or a transformed community. So the monomyth is basically a story of spiritual transformation structured as a rite of passage, the journey from an ordinary person to a hero. It starts off with an ordinary person leading an ordinary and often unhappy life, like the handicapped Jake Sully in Avatar, Harry Potter in his abusive uncle's home, or Luke Skywalker in his uncle's moisture farm in Star Wars. Suddenly something happens, the call to adventure. These heroes-to-be are unexpectedly pulled out of their ordinary world. This is the separation phase in the rite of passage. They are separated from their ordinary world. At first, they hesitate and even refuse to join the adventure, but they're eventually dragged in. So next begins the second phase of the rite of passage, the transitional or the liminal phase. The heroes meet their mentors, their spiritual guides. Luke Skywalker meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. Harry Potter meets Albus Dumbledore. Jake meets Neytiri. And then the hero becomes part of another enchanted world. They learn the ways and secrets of that world. Jake learns the powers of the Na'vi on Pandora, where everything is different. Harry Potter learns the magic of the sorcerers. Luke Skywalker learns the ways of the Jedi. In this other world, there are many tests, difficulties, and ordeals. The hero's spiritual character is tested. So these are stories of spiritual transformation. But in the end, they manage to find the secrets, which are connected to the secret power of the universe. Jake connects through the Tree of Life. He understands the meanings, the secrets, and the wisdoms of the Na'vi. He learns how to communicate with the animals of Pandora and enlist them to his cause. Luke learns how to work with the Force and brings spiritual redemption to his father, Darth Vader. Harry Potter destroys Voldemort's Horcruxes, saving the world from evil. At long last, these heroes become completely transformed people with special spiritual powers. This is the third phase of the rite of passage, the phase of reincorporation, where the hero returns to normal social life. The popularity of these films can be attributed to our own identification with these heroes. In some ways, these myths are saying something about ourselves, about our souls. As we watch these films, we put our feet into the shoes of these heroes, the adventure and the transformation they undergo, and the discoveries they encounter. When we watch these films, we identify with the challenges and transformations that the heroes are undergoing. Like in the liminal phase of a ritual, our mindscape is transformed while we watch the film. We see the world through the eyes of Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter, and we experience the mindscape that is created by the film. These myths tell a story about what it is to be a human being, and about the possibility of spiritual transformation that we undergo as human beings. These characters are often young people on their way to maturity. Life is always a process of transformation. We're always becoming something new and different, especially during our youth. Through this liminal state, as our soul reacts to the objects of consciousness in the mindscape created by the film, our soul is influenced and perhaps transformed. Consciously or not, when the film is over and you step back into your ordinary mindscape, you might be a changed person. What should be the direction and purpose of these transformations? These myths let us imagine ourselves undergoing a spiritual transformation, going through a spiritual rite of passage, leaving our old state, entering an enchanted liminal world, and finally becoming a transformed person, with a new mission of service to humanity or to all living beings, saving the suffering, bringing goodness and justice to the world. Many myths are stories about this transformation, giving us a path to imagine ourselves going through such a transformation. In our mindscape, we go through these transformations and we become heroes. These myths aren't stories that we make up individually. Mythology is a collective thing. We learn myths from our society. In ancient days, our ancestors learned them through storytelling around the campfire. In modern times, we learn them in the cinema and through other modern media. That's our rite of passage. We separate ourselves from our daily life by going into the dark room of the cinema. In the darkness, we enter another world where we can forget ordinary life and live in an imaginary world. And then we step out of the darkness, step out of the cinema, and we go back into our normal world. And to some degree, we bring the film's mindscape into the ordinary mindscape. We act in the world as if it were the movie, and we recreate the world along the script of the movie.